All right. So our speakers today are myself, I'll be talking at the end. We also have Ganga Nakarmi, who is our project inventory manager, and Seth Cardwell, who is our bad buildings or community development project associate. We're gonna split up telling you a little bit more about our bad buildings process and how you can get involved if you are interested. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Seth, I believe, right? You probably have to scoot
Hello,
up.
everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Right, scoot up.
I am sorry for hovering in the background, but we're having a technical difficulty and I couldn't get on the Zoom meeting, so I'm just hovering in Carrie's office. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We are excited to give you an overview of the bad buildings process. So I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to start with giving an overview and how we develop our teams, taking a look at the two-phase model that we have, and then Ganga's going to take us a little bit more in depth on the survey process, and then Carrie is going to wrap us up at the end. So jumping right in, looking at an overview, the Bad Buildings Program is a statewide initiative that provides technical assistance and site analysis tools to enhance abandoned and dilapidated buildings and programs in communities. That can include anything from institutional to residential to commercial, industrial, or mixed-use properties in your community. We really want to highlight today that in the past, this has been more of a residential focus, but we can tailor it to meet the community's needs. So if you want to focus on something other than residential properties, that is something that we can do. Next slide. And looking at the acronym, what are bad buildings? B in bad stands for brownfield. So those are going to be your former commercial and industrial sites. As well as things like old school buildings. Abandoned are the properties that can be, it's kind of like an umbrella term. It can catch both residential, commercial, and industrial properties, any building that is vacant. And dilapidated is another term that we use to catch those structures that are falling into disrepair and need to be addressed in the community, but we may not necessarily be sure that those are vacant. So just because the building is not vacant doesn't mean it can't be classified as a bad community. So those structures will fall under that dilapidated column. Next slide. And looking at how we can transform the bad into the good and the impacts of bad buildings in our community. The bad are that having a high presence of those types of structures in your community can lead to increased instances of crime in the immediate area. They can create health and safety hazards for people in the community, not only through, access to those buildings through things like broken doors and broken windows where people could, get in there and get hurt, but also through exposure to things like asbestos or lead-based paint. They result in reduced tax revenues, slowed economic development, and they also directly impact the adjacent property values of buildings that may not necessarily be classified as bad buildings. Transforming those and looking at the good, getting rid of those structures can increase the surrounding property values. It helps to preserve green fields if you want to turn those sites, demolish those structures and turn them into green space. It can also clear up space for development and not have to develop a green field. It can eliminate eyesores. It can create community assets, things like if you want to get rid of those structures and make sure that there's no contamination on the site and create something like a pocket park like that and looking at redevelopment options and opening up those avenues. And they can help create new and local jobs based on the type of redevelopment that is pursued by the community. And looking at our model, it's a two-phase model. So the first step in that model is going to be forming the bad buildings team. The second step is when we'll have our first community meeting and we'll come in and we'll train everyone. We'll train those teams how to do the surveying that we do. Step 3 will be us coming back and developing the building inventory. Step 4, which is when we move into phase 2, which is when we will be creating the redevelopment plan, looking at the prioritization of those properties. And step 5 will be implementing the plan. And going into a quick timeline of how that may look, today we're doing our quick overview to the Accelerate communities, targeting the Accelerate communities. If you are not in an Accelerate community, that's perfectly okay. And we're happy to have you here too. And we can talk more if you're interested on how we can help you. Month 1, this is just giving a rough general timeline. That timeline will get more specific if you guys are interested in pursuing these options. Month 1 will include the first Bad Buildings team meeting. That will also be our survey, training, and inventory day. Once we have that survey data, we'll bring it back to the office, and in month 2 and 3, we'll work on kind of creating a spreadsheet and analyzing the survey results that we've created. If we need to make any visits to the community in the meantime to do another survey day, we can do that as well. Month 3 and 4, that is when we'll have a local prioritization meeting. That's where we'll come back with the inventory and we'll look at the properties usually that have been classified as poor or should be demolished for the sake of time. That doesn't mean we can't have conversations about other buildings. Those are just usually the ones that communities want to focus on first. So again, we have that conversation with community members and have an open public meeting where we can engage on how we want to prioritize those structures. Month 4 and 5, once we have that prioritization meeting and we start to develop those conversations with community members, we'll come back and we will begin developing our report and recommendations based on the conversations that we have had. And then at the end of month 5 and the beginning of month 6, that's when we'll do our final presentation to the community. So jumping in a little bit on creating your bad buildings team, the team basics. So in order to complete the survey process, we'll need teams, and we always want to remember to make sure that our teams have a diverse array of stakeholders, because that will help in the prioritization process when we're talking about redevelopment options, whether or not we think we have. When we get into the part of the program where we're ready to start talking about property owners and who might be cooperative versus who might not, that helps us kind of leverage those properties and decides which ones we want to prioritize. So we always want to make sure that we have a diverse group of stakeholders. That can include government officials, it can include business owners in the immediate area, it can include concerned citizens, religious leaders, and other interested parties. We always encourage making a name for your team just to have some fun with the process along the way. And we always want to make sure that we have a local champion. The local champion is usually known by everyone in the community already, but we want to make sure to get them involved because we want to have those voices of people who are really engaged in the community to kind of elevate the status of this and really push for these things to get done. And emphasizing that many hands make light work. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ganga, who's going to tell us a little bit about the survey process.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Seth and Kerry. Hi again. Hello, everyone. I am Ganga Nagarmi, a Brownfield Project Inventory Manager at WVU Brownfield Assistance Center, and I have been working here for a little bit over a year. So while we are discussing about brownfields and community development here at WVU Brownfield Assistance Center, we offer technical support with a focus on bad buildings in communities as well. Please do not get upset by the word bad. It is not what it sounds like. Bad refers to a brownfield, abandoned and dilapidated, as showed in this slide. There are bad buildings everywhere. As we all know, it is highly unlikely to have communities without bad buildings, especially in old towns and cities. From our previous conversations, we felt it is true in case of Accelerate and CBRI communities as well. And this is what brought us today for this presentation. And thank you again for all of you for joining us today. So with that, today I am going to talk about how to take a survey of bad buildings in your community and what does that mean to all of us. So I am happy to answer any questions you may have to the best of my knowledge. So why do we do survey? Let's talk about that first. So we do survey, or the basics of survey is to understand it better for avoiding potential complications in order to determine the best course of actions for any planning and development activities. A good survey always includes collecting primary information that is reliable and useful. With that, we want to support and equip community stakeholders, including city or town professionals, with the tools and resources necessary to implement the bad building models in your community. So now, why do we do survey? We know about a little bit about that. So basics of bad building surveying is, it's all about, it's basically about the wind seal survey. It's a primary survey. So we do that either on the paper basis or, or phone, or even with the driving, while driving. So it includes 2 to 3 people and record at best possible what you can see from the sidewalk. Do not go onto the properties, so because we do not encourage you to go others properties. So, and if the property owners or others ask, tell them what the overall purpose of doing this and how this will help the community. And also you can invite them or encourage them to participate in the upcoming events like community meetings, so they know or they understand better about what we are doing. And so the survey structure is divided mainly into five sections, and property descriptions. In this section, we basically keep the records about property types. For example, what kind of property is that? Single family property or duplex or mixed use or vacant lot or any other properties. So this will describe by the property descriptions, and then we will do the structural conditions of the buildings. So in this section, we basically look at building frame and structure, roof, chimney, gutters, windows and doors, and siding, veneers and paint, and porch overhangs and entrance. So what do they look like while we do the survey is basically covered in this section. And the definition of structural conditions, these are basically like good, fair, poor, or should be demolished type, which we will discuss more on the survey date. And then we will discuss about how these everything means for our purpose of surveying bad buildings. And another section is about the vacant lot. And in this case, also we categorize them into good, fair, poor, and should be demolished, or how we can how these categories fall in the vacant condition. So, and the fifth one is about the vacant building indicators. This is about a structure that appears vacant, and this sign of vandalism, for sale sign, piles of mail, sign of being burned. So these are all the indicators of vacant buildings that we will discuss more during the survey time, and um, also while taking the survey. So I would like to also think about the significance of this survey by remembering that garbage in is equal to garbage out, meaning that the quality of results depend on what information you put into the survey system. If the input is bad, it can mislead the results. So that means the quality of information coming out cannot be better than the quality of information that went in. So this is very, very important to think about while doing the survey. And here are the survey mapping softwares that we will be using and discussing during our survey. We have been using different survey and sources such as Regrid, ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS Online, and County GIS sites. So in the field, we'll be discussing more about the regrid, because you will be using as a surveyor. If you choose to be a volunteer surveyor, you will be using regrid app, and then these two I will be using. Our organization will be using for more mapping and other activities. So let's talk about this regrid first. Regrid is a software, mapping software, which was developed in 2009 in Loveland Technology, Detroit, Michigan. And this has assembled parcel level data throughout the US. So it has more detailed information. So we have been using this quite a while. And this will give us like property boundaries, building footprints, addresses, ownership, etc. And the mapping tool, this ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online, are the developed by Esri. Esri stands for Environmental Systems Research Institute, and it was developed in 1969. And this software is basically used for mapping, analyzing, documenting, and communicating, and many more. And in the other one is the county GIS sites, which I have been using for different, like validating and identifying the properties that we have surveyed during the survey. So these are the three main surveys, and I will talk in detail about Bricklead in a minute. So after this, once we have this list of survey properties, we rate each properties as good, fair, poor, or should be demolished based on the required work needed. So as we can see in the map here, the slide here, the properties which needs no more than 2 minor repairs will be good, and needs 3 or more minor repairs, but no more than 1 major repair will be falling into fair, and so on. So we will discuss also basically in our program. And here is an example of Bricklead survey that I am talking about. So we will provide a detailed training on how to use this survey during the survey day. This is what it looks like. The app looks like this. And once you click on this menu, you will see the survey mode. And if you click on that survey mode, you will see the relevant respective survey depending on which communities we are working on. And then you click on the survey plus sign here, which lead into the different questions that we just discussed in the previous slides, where you will be doing where you will find the survey questions and go for surveying. And after surveying, during the survey questions, after surveying questions, you will have the photographs that you will take, and then once you submit the photographs, you will see. Could you please do another previous slide, please? Yes, and then here you will see more like, once you click the survey, you will have the survey information or the survey display. You can see the property here, and then the picture that you sent with the survey like this. And we can once you have all these information, we can see the details about who is the owner, how big is the land, and etc. So this is very cool tool, and we can get the basic information from one software or one visit. Next slide, please. So here is an example of surveying bad building. So now you can see the example here. This is the building, and from this building we can see, okay, the building looks like the building's frame and structure looks like minor problem because it stands good, and the roof and chimney has major problems because it looks like it is overhanging from here, so it rated as a major problem. And windows and doors also are major problems. Siding also major problems. As you can see, the painting is really bad in this picture or in this property. And course also is hanging. When you see in the there, you can see all these. And so you will rate them as a poor because of the description that we just discussed before, and we'll be discussing more during the survey time. So this type of survey is more subjective matter. That means it largely depends on who is looking at the survey and his or her state of mind as well. So sometimes the same property can be seen differently by different individuals, and even same individual can see the different can see the same property in different different times. So this this is mostly the subjective matter. That's why we create like a group of 2 or 3 people, because then they can talk each other and have feedback and get the right information, or record the right information, best information, or attempt to have the best information as best as they can about that property. So the survey result is very preliminary and can be changed. We will execute in-person workshop with these results in the community to finalize the survey results. That means previous, yes, please. So no. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And the survey results, this survey is not final. So we will come with these results to the community again, and there will be another settings with the community, and that will be different setting afterward, and then we will discuss preliminary findings with the community members, and then we will see how their perspectives or opinions are on these results, and then after we can change if necessary, and that is the process actually. So our bad building inventory approach is really a grassroots level inventory, we can say. Next slide, please. This is how the mapping looks like after survey. And overall mapping buildings gives a general overview of where and how these properties have been distributed in the community or survey location. So this is an example, and it also helps getting further insights about the property by overlaying other multiple map layers such as flood or land cover, land use, or proximities to the food services or the utilities, and so on. So this gives really another layer of another insight about how we can plan and how or where the bad buildings are located and how we best can use and plan for further development. So this is very, very valuable information when we are doing any kind of development activities. And next slide, please. So after we do all these things, now we can see some benefits about this surveying. So the benefits are discussed as here: opportunity to learn new techniques. As I said, we'll be using this Rigrid software in the field. So you will learn how to take the data by using that software. And this gives us really comprehensive and visual inspection and review. It helps better understanding of the blighted properties, and also build strengthened community consensus, because once we have this authentic and real information, we all can, or community can get, oh yes, so, or they can come into common or like consensus. So also it helps planning and decision making. As I said, once we overlay other different layers of the map, then it helps us give some ideas about how to plan and make a decision, and also designing and developing. And these are all very, very valuable information and very strong information while writing a grant or applying any kind of grant. And also, it helps getting further insights and then stand out and stay competitive, because once you have these all real informations, then you can say, okay, this is our, you can visually, show these things wherever you are applying. So, and there is very, very, these are very, potential to get the demolition funds or any kind of grants in the future. So, having said that, this tool is very, very important, and I will be glad to take any questions if you have any. And I can take now or later, depending on what Kerry is thinking. Otherwise, I will hand it to Kerry for next information.
Thanks, Ganga. I don't see any questions in the chat just now, but I just want to underline that very last benefit of surveying and inventorying your bad buildings. You may have seen other communities in West Virginia recently get money from the DEP for demolition of their abandoned building properties and wondered how they got access to that money. And one of the ways they got it is by being ready with a list of properties that needed to be demolished. And so the first step of dealing with any of these buildings is to identify where they are and identify which ones need to be demolished and which ones you can get site access to and funding for demolition. And so that is a huge benefit of surveying your bad buildings among many of the others. We have a question from Sharon David. Are initial surveys carried out by volunteers? Yes. So when you put together your bad building team that Seth talked about, we'd like for there to be, it's important that there is municipal buy-in because there are a lot of tools that can be to address abandoned buildings on the far end of the process that are only available to the government, right? To government to do code enforcement and things like that. But we all live in small communities in West Virginia, so there's not enough people to do it, and it's important that the whole community is bought in. And so those initial surveys are carried out by volunteers that will train in the app and in the survey process. All right. Melissa McCune says, are there templates available for use? There are templates available. We have this entire process laid out in our Bad Buildings Toolkit, which is on our website. You can, if you've got your excited band of merry volunteers, use our website, look through that and attempt it on your own. We also are currently looking for communities to help directly do this. And so I will take that question into our next steps. And please continue to put your questions in the chat and we will watch them and then we'll stay until we answer all your questions today. So what are your next steps if you're interested in this process? You want to start addressing your abandoned dilapidated buildings? We are currently actively seeking communities to participate in our process. We are prioritizing communities, as Seth said before, that are in either Accelerate communities or in the Act Now Coalition's 21 county footprint. So if you don't know if you're an Accelerate community, we can help you figure that out. But these are the 21 counties that are our current priority. We are not taking applications in a competitive way, but after this webinar, you will get a link. You'll get all these slides and a recording of today, but you'll also get a link to an interest form that lets us know that you're interested, and then we'll set up a meeting to talk through with you to see where you are in the process, what might make sense as far as technical assistance goes on our end. But if you're not in one of those counties, please do not despair. Please do still reach out. I know we have some folks from Marion County. I saw some other parts of the state on the call today. We still have other resources that we may be able to assist you with. We just are prioritizing those 21 counties right now, but we encourage everyone, if you're interested, to please reach out and we'll see how we can assist you with the resources we have available. So you're in one of those counties, you've got your team ready to go. What should you do next? So first thing to do is let us know that you're interested. As I said, you're going to get a link to a form that will help you do that. You also can email us directly and you'll have our contact information after this. We will work with you to schedule an initial call to figure out what your priorities are, what your timeline is like, what your timeline looks like, what our timeline looks like, and then schedule a first community meeting to educate the community about the process and let them know what we're doing, and then start to recruit your team. And then we'll work with you to build that team and schedule the rest of the process as Seth laid it out, laid out the timeline, and as Ganga laid out the process itself. But if you just have a little question, if you don't want to do the whole process yet, or you just want to chat with us about it, we're happy to answer your questions. We're happy to connect you with folks who have done this process before, who can tell you a little bit more about their experience. And you can also check out the Bad Buildings website to find that toolkit, to find more information about all of the resources that we have available around abandoned and dilapidated buildings. So that is the end of our formal presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite you to ask your question in the chat or raise your hand and we will call on folks if you want to ask a question out loud. We have done this process across the state in communities as small as Thomas and as large as neighborhood in Charleston. So it can be scaled up or down. So don't feel like your community is the wrong size. It is not. It can be done in any size community.
I have a question. When one of these properties is identified as a bad property, do you what happens at the end? Do they get put out to be sold to investors who may go ahead and want to transform them? Do they go to the county and then the county just does whatever it needs to do to demolish it and I don't know, either sell the property or turn it into a green space, or what happens?
That's a great question. So when you go through the process, we'll walk through some different tools that you can use to engage the current property owner. Some of those tools may be proactive, positive tools, like a friendly letter that says to the property owner, we noticed in our survey that your property is in has been abandoned for a while, you know, how we want to support you, et cetera, et cetera. It may be a more stick approach that there's code, if you have code enforcement, if you don't have code enforcement, we'll advise you on how you might get resources for that. But if you have code enforcement, there are more legal things that you can do, like citations of those. This process doesn't give you any legal power that your community doesn't already have. It may help you understand some of those powers more. This is why it's important to have the local government engaged, right? Because if you do need to have some enforcement activity, that's not something that a volunteer team can do on their own. But there's no automatic thing that happens to those properties. But it does help you, we do help you identify who the property owner is so that you can start that communication and start to reach out positively, and then if you have to, negatively.
Okay.
How does the program address buildings in historic districts? This is a great question. We treat them in the inventory process the same, but that information and that data would be included there. And there are additional resources that may be available, as well as some additional things you might have to do depending on the status of that building in the district. But it's additional information that goes into the inventory and then potentially additional tools that may be possible to use. Thanks, Sharon. And thank you, Dawn, for that question too. Other questions? All right, that was a lot of information. So I know you're all digesting it. What kinds of development activities are considered? Sharon, you mean for reuse? She says yes. That's completely up to the community. So when we come, we'll talk about priorities with the community. The redevelopment plan is really more of a report. We've started calling it a report now. And so it will have recommendations on the kinds of things that you can do, but we are here to assist, to work with you in your community on these priorities. They're not our priorities. So we're not going to tell you what kind of development might be important or necessary in your community. That is up to the people who live there. So I hope that answers your question. So the short version of that is all of them. We just did this process in Pound. You saw in the map, Pound, that's a tiny town in Virginia that we just did this process in. Some places they talked about green space. Some places they talked about commercial. Some places they talked about mixed use. So that it can be all of it, even in the same community. Is there a minimum or maximum size of properties considered for bad? There is not. Likely if you had a lot, what we would suggest is that we would do a manageable part, maybe start with a portion of town to educate you on the process and prioritize it. And then we could come back and do another part of town, or you could use that training that you've done to do a different part of town. But my biggest suggestion on that is that we want it to be manageable, because if it's too big for the community, then it can be overwhelming and then it feels like nothing's happening. And so we would want to take off manageable chunks. would be my suggestion, but there's not a hard and fast number. If you had a ton of volunteers, you could split it up and do a bunch of town. But if you've only got 5 or 6, then we might want to focus on one neighborhood, depending on how large your community is. Can you redevelop properties in a floodplain? It's hard, right? So it's hard to
Yes, that's
redevelop
very
properties in
risky.
a floodplain. There's a lot of questions. That it depends, but I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it is a lot harder. We can definitely do bad buildings on properties in the floodplain. Probably most of what we did in Plound was in the floodplain. So. Is there a website for finding out what kind of grants may be available, and do we have someone that can help with the writing of grant? We do have some folks who can help with writing grants depending on what type of grants there are. There's also a grant assistance center at Marshall and WVU that helps with grants more generally, and I'm going to find that website for you. I believe they also, I don't know if George is still here because he knows a little bit more about that, but I believe that the grant assistance centers also are starting to collect different grants to post and share. I know I've seen some in their website, in their emails, but we can connect you with those folks as well. There's their website. Do you all eventually have a list of properties available for redevelopment? It is definitely possible that an inventory could turn into that. We do not manage a list like that for the state or for our part of West Virginia. But it is possible that you could very much use an inventory as a starting point to turn that into that for your community. The development office does have something like that. It is not comprehensive of every site in the state, but they do have some sites listed that are available. And then there are some more local EDAs that do that. For example, Bluefield has one, and there's some other locations that have them that are more community specific. Other questions? These are great questions. Any ideas of when coming to Northern West Virginia? We please still fill out the form when you get it for Northern West Virginia. We can still potentially come and do this. It's just our focus in Southern West Virginia is based on funding right now, but we do have a little bit of other funding that we could do in other pieces or other parts of the state. Sorry, I started reading the question. Do we have assistance for early stages like developing your team? We can help you develop your team. So we can help, we can just add another meeting on where we talk with you either virtually or we can come to you to talk about who might be on your team. The West Virginia Community Development Hub also frequently has programs where they help build community capacity through, they focus on community teams. I don't believe they have any open applications for programs right now, but they're a great resource more broadly. But again, for this specific, we can help you think about who should be and help recruit folks for your bad buildings team. Sorry, I'm answering all the questions. I don't have the turnaround, Deborah, for the Northern, but if you give us, we can set up a call and chat about it. What is the best way to get business owners that are interested in redevelopment properties involved, and what resources are available for business owners? I think the best way to get them involved is to invite them to the table from the beginning, and directly and personally invite them and tell them why. As far as resources that are available to business owners, there may be, it just depends. So that's something that we can look at with you, but it depends a lot on a number of factors. So the best avenue for helping communities with asbestos inspections is to email George Carrico or myself. I'm only half joking. George is still here. But if you reach out to the Brownfields Assistance Centers, we can help you find some different resources for specifically asbestos inspections and other environmental assessments. So I'm going to put my email in the chat and you'll have it when you get these slides. And if George is who you need to talk to, I'll get you to George. George Carrico is the director. I'm the director of the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center. George is the director of the Southern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center. I know the great George. He is great. Excellent. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much. I'm going to turn off the recording, but we still have a few minutes. So if you have another question and you want to stick around and ask it, please do. We'll stay as long as there are questions. And otherwise, we look forward to hearing more from you and what's going on in your communities.